Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 44 of Talk of Fame podcast. I'm Kylie, and today we have on the lovely actress, producer, and director, Lauren Locks. Thanks so much for coming on, Lauren. I'm so happy to have you on.
Absolutely. And it's like I just said, I'm like amazed that you're running a podcast at your age. It's awesome.
Thanks so much, Lauren. So over the last 2 years, you kind of been in isolation. So what's something that you did over the last 2 years so you want to have time to really get for?
Okay, so something that I think is super cool that is kind of like new access is, before the pandemic, a lot of times if you wanted to take acting classes with a really prestigious acting academy or studio, you kind of had to be in that city. But because of the pandemic and Zoom, now I've been able to study with some coaches and teachers in LA and some in Atlanta and kind of have access to newer training that I wouldn't have had before. And I really think that it's been phenomenal.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, what was kind of like the hardest part for you as you kept traveling to the Los Angeles, New York, or whatever locations we are for auditioning? What was kind of the hardest part for you to kept traveling basically every week to go for auditions and stuff, meetings and stuff like that?
So I haven't had to travel too much. Normally it's just if I can be a local hire somewhere, I'll put it in the notes section when I'm sending in for something, or my agents will. But yeah, traveling's a little difficult. I was actually in LA, what was it, February 2020, right before the pandemic shut down, because one of my films was having its world premiere out there. And I just felt, it was so nice to be in LA, and then the world shut down.
Yeah, I was literally down in LA in January 2020. So I was basically at the edge of like going to LA before COVID hit. And once I got back, like the whole world has shut down. Like we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's wild because you don't have a second thought about it back then. You were just like, we're going places, we're seeing people, no big deal. And now it's everywhere you go, you're kind of like, are people vaccinated? Do I need to wear a mask? And then you probably should wear a mask anyway, because it's nice, to not pass things on to other people, because you never know when you have them now.
Yeah, for sure. Like back then when we went to Los Angeles, like January, February, like COVID was kind of starting to be a thing. But like it wasn't like a big thing to the point where everyone had to wear a mask. It was basically at the peak of it. Like it was kind of becoming known, but it wasn't as big. It's only like it was basically in China or whatever it started in. So like I seen people wearing masks when I went to LA and stuff. So I was like, oh, it's probably not going to affect the United States. And like maybe like 2 months later, it affected everyone. So I'm like, well, what are we supposed to do now with our lives? Like, we're home quarantining, we can't really do anything, Zoom calls a lot and everything. I'm like, what are we supposed to do now? Like, oh, we're shut down. Are we gonna have to wear a mask again? Like, what do we have to do to protect our safety and health? Like, how are we supposed to do that?
Right. And I kind of like going forward after the pandemic, I'm kind of a fan of the mask in airports.
Yeah.
I think, beyond the pandemic, like say we finally get to the end of this thing, because we keep thinking we're at the end and then something else comes out. But say we get to the end of this thing, I think if you're not feeling good, if you're sick and you're sniffly, wear a mask. If you're going to the airport and there's a bunch of people around who are traveling from all different places, wear a mask. And then hopefully in our normal daily lives, we can go back to normalcy at some point.
Yeah, for sure. So as I kind of mentioned before, you are an actress, producer, and writer. I mean, director. I don't know why I keep out writer for some reason. But what made you kind of want to start doing that?
Yeah, I write too, so that's totally fine. So acting's been in my bones since I was a child. I was like 7. My mom took me to this workshop. They had 2 sides. You could either do the dancing or the acting. And I chose dancing because I was already in dance classes. But the whole time I was staring at the kids who were doing the acting and I was like, I want to be doing that. And then I saw Titanic and I was like, I want to be doing that. And so it just like, I did acting from then on, theater, and then I didn't get into the film world until 2015. And then the directing and producing kind of happened out of necessity. I had some stories that I wanted to tell. And in order to make them happen, I actually had to learn quickly and jump in that seat to make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's like you like kind of grew up in the theater experience, like you always kind of had a passion for acting and stuff. Like how did that kind of, like, did you ever realize you always wanted to become an actor before you even kind of thought of it? Like, did you always say you wanted to be an actor?
Yeah, I mean, it was that young age, that first experience. And then I went and started trying out for local plays and whatnot. And it just, I knew it was the thing back then. When I was younger, it was like, do I want to be a veterinarian? You know, just stuff like that. And then as soon as I jumped into the acting, I knew that it's what I wanted to do. And from junior high, high school, all of my friends, they just knew that that was my passion in life. And I just, there's nothing I have a degree in public relations that I got in college. And I love that. I found a lot of passion in that, but I just kept coming back to the acting. It's just, it is the one thing that I'll never get tired of.
Yeah, for sure. Like, journalism has kind of been in my blood as well, since I had like reporters in my family as well. So I kind of had it in my blood, I'll say. And so people always kind of mentioned to me as I got older. And so they always said that, Kylie, you would be good at that. You know everything about sports, entertainment industry. You watch a lot of movies, shows, and etc. And like, you'd be like, Kylie, you'll be great at that. You love award shows. That would be perfect for you. And you want to be in the industry. So like, that would be perfect for you to get in the industry and kind of grow yourself, and you can do more things as you get older, whatever you want to do. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really care, to be honest with you. Like, I just kind of never took it seriously and just lived my life day by day. And then like last year when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, well, I guess I should start this. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have nothing to do. I was home watching TV, which probably was the best thing to do after 24/7, to be honest with you. And so like, I was like, I need something to do. Like, I'm tired of myself just sitting around laying in my bed and doing nothing. I absolutely hated it. So I was like, okay, well, how to start this. And now almost a year later, I'm like still going along with this. And like, people always say to me, like, Kylie, I never seen you love anything more than like your podcast and talking to people and everything. I'm like, well, I like, what's better than talking to people in the industry and everything? Like, it's like, I never thought possible. Like, when I was a little kid, I never thought I would actually do this, because like I was a very kind of shy kid, and I've seen like some actors are in the industry are mostly shy when they kind of first kind of start out. So I was like, well, this is kind of, I need to work on myself somehow. So this is kind of what I have to do to get my
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. I would have never guessed that you were shy, because you're very charismatic. But I completely agree with you about a lot of actors being really shy, because it's a really vulnerable thing to start doing in the beginning, when you're like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, that thought of like, oh, should I try that? And then you're like, oh God, I have to perform in front of other people. Even if it's just the people in your city in an acting class, like, it's still a very scary thing, because you start wondering, what if I'm not good enough? Or what if I'm not good as good as everybody else in the class? So it can be a really scary thing when you're starting out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's how I felt. When I first started out, I was scared to death that I was starting this. And like, once I got on, I was like, okay, I'm getting more comfortable with this. Like, this is something, you know, like, it takes a couple of things to do before you get comfortable with acting. Like, anything takes time to get comfortable doing auditions and doing all those things you have to do for the process of getting a role. But like, what, when you're usually kind of auditioning kind of for a role, what is kind of the hardest part for you to do when you're trying to get a role?
So when I first got into film acting, I think the hardest part for me was like letting go of the role after, because you do so many auditions, but there's only one person for every role. So there's so many of us auditioning, one person for the role. The likelihood of you getting the role is low.
Yeah.
And then it can feel like rejection over and over again, which is why you have to have a thick skin. But then you start to change your mindset and just put that away and go on to the next one. And if it's meant to be for you, then it's going to work out. So that was really tough for me at first. Now, I guess the toughest part of auditioning for me would be, I'm trying to think. I don't know, because I kind of like them all, but sometimes now the deadlines are super quick with lots of dialogue, and I've gotten so much better at memorizing, but sometimes it can be a little daunting, because there was a time where I thought, you know what, it's okay if I paraphrase a little because it's how I talk. Yeah. But as I'm starting to audition for bigger things, you know, these writers have worked on these words and they're very specific. And so I'm trying to be word perfect to their words because they wrote them in a certain way with certain punctuation. And you want to be true to what they're trying to say while still infusing yourself in the role. So maybe more of like meshing myself with the character portrayed, because, you know, you'll see this breakdown come through and sometimes you'll get that thought in your mind like, oh, well, that's this kind of person. And you'll try to play the character, but you have to remember that there are parts of you that are similar to that character, and then you have to bridge the gap between the two.
Yeah, for sure. So as like we're kind of talking about the industry, auditioning, all those things, like you recently won the Best Female Directing Award. What was kind of your reaction to winning that award?
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it feels great because when I get into the directing role, I know exactly kind of how I see the film playing out in my head. Communicating that to the crew team and the actors, like it just goes differently from what you see in your head to the final end product. So sometimes that can be a bit jarring as a director when you're seeing the final product and you're like, it's not exactly how I imagined it, but as long as the story's getting told, you know, that's the whole point, is we're a storyteller. You're a storyteller, you know, when you're doing these podcasts and any journalism you might do in the future, as long as the story gets told in the way that you want it to get told, then I feel pretty good about it. But as far as winning an award, I mean, I'm just surprised and blessed, honestly.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like that's really amazing, like to kind of step back in the like behind the scenes and really kind of picture is like the mindset of what you want for the film and see what works at the best. And I'm currently writing a book right now, so I basically know how it feels. I'm going to come out with ideas, inspiration of what I want to do, like what I want the book to turn out to be. Right. And stuff, and that's basically very hard to deal with coming up ideas with new inspirations. Like most of my inspirations come when I'm not working or when I'm in the shower or when I'm in a car. I usually come up with the ideas when I'm not thinking about it or I'm just trying to think of random things. But like, what is like the hardest part for you as you come up with ideas? Like, what is the hardest part for you to kind of find inspiration and figure out what to do with the storyline of the movie or show?
Yeah, so each one's kind of different. As far as inspiration goes, I feel like I find it everywhere, but then it's like I have to kind of zone in on which ones would be worth, you know, putting all the effort into making it into a film or a script. There's a ton of scripts on my computer, but I've only made, you know, 3 films of my own, and then I'm making a web series now, and then I directed someone else's film for them. But it's the ideas that won't go away. So it's, you know, if I'm thinking about something and I can't get the thought out of my head, it normally will hit me like, it always happens either at bedtime, in the middle of the night, or first thing when I wake up in the morning. It's somewhere around, you know, sleeping to waking, and I'll end up like writing a note on my phone or, you know, grabbing my computer and writing something down. But it's the ideas that won't leave my head that kind of give me the inspiration. For instance, Dawn was actually inspired by a couple different things that I meshed together, but one of them was a story somebody told me about another person, and I just couldn't get the story out of my head, and so I had to write something kind of centered around it.
Yeah, for sure. So as you kind of mentioned, like you directed and like produced free films and stuff, like what made you kind of want to kind of step in its foot behind the scenes producing and directing instead of being kind of in front of the camera?
Yeah, so well, part of it was so I could write a role that I could play. Yeah. You know, and then the other bit, like I said before, out of necessity, if I wanted to tell a story, like if I want to tell that story but nobody else is telling that story, then I have to make it happen. Yeah. Literally have to just step into it and make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So Do you have anyone that you look up to in the industry as like an actor, director, and producer, or just kind of in general?
Yes. So I love Eva Green.
Oh,
You know Eva
she's really
Green?
good. Yeah, she's really good.
She's great. I love her in Penny Dreadful. And you know what's really interesting about her, and this is why I admire and respect her. Well, one, she's just so intriguing to see on the screen. You can't take your eyes off of her, you know? And she has, you know, dark hair and green eyes like me. So, but she, you know, she was offered that role in the Bond movie Casino Royale as Vesper or whatever with the love knot. And she originally turned it down because she was like, I don't want to be one of those, just another Bond girl. But then when she realized the role had a little bit of substance to it, she decided to take it on. And I was like, see, that is like quintessential knowing your worth. Saying, I don't want to just take a role that doesn't have any substance to it, but then when you find one and then you go for it, like that is knowing what you're worth and then going and taking a role and making it so memorable. So, Eva Green.
Yeah, Eva Green is amazing. Like that's how many people are. Like they always don't want to always be a housewife. They want an actual role and that are important for people and what people see. They want to impact people in front of the screen or wherever or behind the screen, wherever you're working on. But Gina Davis, I don't know if you have heard of her, but she is an actress, activist, and she lives in like League of Their Own, Summer Louise, and she's my biggest inspiration in terms of podcasting. Like the way she does moves as a person, like chooses roles that will like impact the women that are watching it. And so
Yeah.
she is like the most impacting person in my life. And like I'm seeing her in a couple of weeks at this event, which I'm very excited for. And so like I don't know. Yeah, and so like I'm like really like, I can't explain like how much I like, care about Gina. Like she's this amazing person and I don't know where I'd be without her, to be honest with you. Like, inspiration, but like she's someone that moves the world, like moves the world, and like all the roles she does impacts the people in watching the role. And so like, she has been impacting women, gender bias in the media. Like, she has been trying to get more roles, more opportunities for women, and all those things. But she's just amazing. Like she's like the amazing person to kind of look up to in terms of
love that. I love that she's like so inspiring to you.
So what is some advice for like younger generations that like to be in the industry one day?
Yeah, so earlier when we were talking about how it's vulnerable to start, that is my biggest piece of advice is just start. Just start, because the thought of getting into acting versus actually taking the step to get into it, there's a world of difference. Yeah. And the best way to start, you know, is obviously by taking classes. You can have a bit of a safe space with people who are in your community or with people on Zoom. And, you know, it's really scary because you think you might fail. And I was posting about this the other day on my Instagram. It's like, you know, messing up in class is not a fail.
Yeah.
It's just growing and learning, because over time, when you put in that practice and work, then you build confidence and consistency, which is very important, because this is not, you know, a quick industry. This is a put in years of work and get somewhere kind of industry.
Yeah.
But your generation has so much going for them. And it's so exciting because the opportunities are boundless now, especially with Zoom and everything. You know, auditioning for film stuff is all being done on self-tape right now, which you can do at home. Yeah. As long as you can figure out the setup, you know, and send it in. So it's a great time to get started.
Yeah, for sure. Like, especially self-tape, like it became like a thing around like maybe 2 years ago. Like people are saying in self-tapes and start going in for auditions. So these due to COVID, everything's happening on Zoom. Maybe we can't go outside, like we can't do things we're used to doing. Like, what do you think like the industry has kind of changed since like the pandemic? How much do you think that has changed since then?
It's definitely changed a lot. I mean, so the self-tape thing, yeah, in the Southeast market, self-tapes were already kind of you know, pretty prominent. In LA or, you know, here in Texas is kind of, you know, it depends on where you're auditioning for the project. But the change has, I think it's been good. I love self-taping because I can do it in my own home, be comfortable, and, you know, get it in and produce a good self-tape and send it off. Because there's something super nerve-wracking about walking into the room with the eyes on you and knowing that you might only have one shot. Yeah. But then the caveat is, if you're sitting at home and you're doing, you know, 15 to 20 takes to get it right, then you probably weren't going to get it in the room anyway. Yeah. But other than that, you know, it's keeping everyone safe. Yeah. Not being around everyone, because now these productions are having where you either have to be completely fully vaccinated. Some are requiring vaccination within the last 6 months. Yeah. And then testing, like you have to get tested within a certain amount of hours. And if I'm in Texas and I book something in Atlanta, I can't get tested in Atlanta. I mean, I can't get tested in Texas and go to Atlanta. I have to get to Atlanta, then test, then work. Yeah. So it's interesting, but I think for now it's a good change. I do know there's a lot of people who wish the in-person auditions would come back, but I think they're gonna either the self-tapes are here to stay or the in-person auditions are gonna trickle back extremely slowly. Yeah, for sure. So you have to play in a role in a winning short film called Allergies. What was that experience playing that role? That one, that was great. I actually have a really special place in my heart for that one because that one I played the mom who kind of had a little bit of a secret, and you know, and her husband, they have this son, and the story, it's a high concept narrative about if we were allergic to races, you know, and so if somebody was allergic to, you know, somebody of a different race, like how would that would be kind of weird, right? Yeah. So it kind of explores that narrative. But the funny thing is I went into that audition, I couldn't find anyone to watch my son at the time, who was 9 months old. So I just sat him in the corner and I was like, is it cool that he's here with me? And I was nervous that he wasn't gonna behave, but he just kind of sat there and played with my sunglasses, and they were like, well, we definitely know you're a mom. But yeah, no, it was a great experience. And I think that film is really special, and it's actually screening here this month at the Austin Revolution Film Festival. So yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it's awesome. Like, how did you be able to kind of film and being a mom at the same time? Like, what was that, like, the hardest kind of thing about it? Is like being a mom first and then acting and both sides. Yeah, that's been a very difficult transition for me because I had to take a bit of hiatus from acting, obviously, towards the end of my pregnancy, and having him for the first year. There's just no way you can act when you have a newborn. But it's been an interesting transition because before, when I would get an audition or I would book something, I could just go whenever I needed. And now I have to make sure that, you know, that he's taken care of first and foremost. And then I also have to make sure that my time is valued, you know, wherever I go, because I may be having to pay a babysitter or, you know, have my parents watch him or something like that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to balance because I definitely have to make sure that he is taken care of first and foremost. You know, he is my son, a human being, and then I have my career. So it's a struggle between, you know, how do I take care of him in a full loving capacity and then also give, you know, all of my attention and love and talent to my career as well. Yeah, for sure. So the final question for today's interview is, you also got to appear in another short film called Cleans. What was that process like for you to get that role? Oh yeah, Cleanse. Yeah. So the process to get the role, that one was also interesting because that one only has 3 characters in it. It's me, and I played Jessica, and then my wife's in the film. Her name is Ashley, and I actually auditioned for both Jessica and Ashley. And I spent so much more time breaking down the Jessica role first because I wanted to hurry and get it out of the way because Ashley was the character I wanted to play. But then the more that I broke down the scenes for Jessica, the more I fell in love with her. And when I went in, I think it was very obvious that I was more of a Jessica than an Ashley.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't have the last page of the audition sides. And so I kind of had to read that cold. But I ended up getting a call back and they loved me. And the director of that film was absolutely amazing, because I've never had an experience like that where the director spent so much time rehearsing with us and doing character work. We would get together and kind of do post-it notes of like our characters and how we felt about each other and what our first dates were like and how we got to this spot in our marriage where we were troubled. So it was a super beautiful thing. And it was an almost entirely female cast and crew, except for, I believe there were 2 men on the whole set. So that was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing how full-style woman like on set is like very rare, and kind of our generation is very rare. So it's amazing. Like there actually has a lot of women on set and like kind of get to work with you and stuff. But like I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're so sweet. You're amazing. And I'm so thankful to have you on. You're amazing. So we'll talk soon for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And I wish you the best of luck with your podcast and your journalism.
So right back at you. Thank you so much.